Dragon Age the Veilguard. Why is this in the news again? Oh, that's right, because it draws clicks and controversy, and of course some losers out there who worked on the game are coming out here to try to play defense. A little too little, a little too late. This game has signed its death ledger and nobody's going to come back to play it because it wasn't good. It wasn't a good game, it wasn't a good idea, it didn't have a good story, and worst of all, it wasn't even Dragon Age. What its titular game was, the idea behind it all, was bullshit. It didn't follow any of the tenets of bioware or any of the tenets of Dragon Age. It completely abandoned the story, completely abandoned the Fade, abandoned every single thing core to the Dragon Age universe, so of course, it's all the fans' fault. As per usual, whenever one of these games fails, it's never the fault of the studio, it's never the fault of the characters, or the writers, or the developers, or anyone. It's only ever the fault of one person. Me, you, all of us, the plebs, the losers, the normal people, the anti-fans, the people who didn't go out and buy it. Why did Charlie's Angels fail? Well, maybe because the men didn't go and watch it. It's the same thing every single time. When something flops, it's never once the fault of the people who make it, because they are the enlightened, they are the holy people, and we are the mere mortals who dare to be in their presence. And when we don't thank them for the morsels that they give us, somehow we're always the asshole. And that's exactly what they're claiming right now, with both an actor from Dragon Age the Veilguard and also one of the ex-writers over at BioWare from a few years ago coming out and saying that it is our fans for not engaging in the game. It is our fault because we wanted it to be bad, because we set it up to be bad, and because we had everything against it before it was even announced. Now, I don't have to be a genius, you don't have to be a genius, but we all know that's a load of crock. We all know that these games, it's not our fault. They aren't owed our patronage, you and I both know that. They know that, but they don't want to accept it, because if they do, then they have to take responsibility. But if they can spin it with IGN and GamesRadar that somehow it's our fault, then they can look a little bit better to the pencil pushers who are asking where their money went. But before going further, like, subscribe, and let's get into this. So the first of the two articles coming out to attack the fans was Dragon Age actor blames fans for Veilguard backlash, claims people just wanted to see BioWare fail. Because of course it's always that we're just a bunch of bigots who just hate whatever comes out. A Dragon Age actress is blaming fans for the backlash against the Veilguard. In the wake of Dragon Age the Veilguard's disastrous reception, one of the franchise's most recognizable voices pointed fingers. Not at the game's direction, story, or development team, but at the very fans who once held BioWare in high regard. Alex Wilton Reagan, best known for voicing the female Inquisitor in Dragon Age Inquisition and returning in Veilguard, has weighed in on the fallout surrounding the title's lukewarm performance. Speaking to IGN, Reagan said she was absolutely devastated by the reception and claimed that Dragon Age the Veilguard backlash was driven by people who just wanted to see BioWare fail. It's such a weird perception that these people have of us, as if we have the time to want something to fail. Attention is limited, why would we waste it wanting something to fail when there was, I don't know, a reason for us to want it to fail? Maybe the real issue isn't that we wanted it to fail, but we more wanted BioWare and Dragon Age to get its comeuppance, to get what it deserves for ruining such a fantastic franchise. She continued on to say, I feel absolutely devastated for BioWare, as a studio that got such mixed reactions to the game, she told IGN. I personally thought it was a really strong game. I thought it was just BioWare being more BioWare. Then you don't know what BioWare is, you know nothing about it. BioWare is edgy, it is dark, and it is fearsome, and it is cruel. This game was none of those things. Instead, it was all hippity-doo, and it was all very happy, and it was all very affirmative. Something that Dragon Age would never be. According to Reagan, the backlash wasn't due to questionable creative choices or the tonal departure from the past Dragon Age titles, but rather due to really bad people on the internet. That's right, it's all because you and me, the really bad men, the little trolls who like to hide around in our dark caves of our mother's basements and shitpost on Twitter and YouTube like, look at how bad this looks. It can't be because maybe, just maybe, we're actually right, and we're the actual audience and we're the actual market. And when you fail to resonate with us, you're going to fail to resonate with the rest of us because we are indicative of where the market is. She continued, I also think a lot of people kind of wanted to see it fail or wanted to see BioWare fail, either because they're just really bad people on the internet, of which there are unfortunately many, as we have discovered. She said, yes, and you're probably far closer to one of them. In fact, I know for a fact that you guys like to platform one. We all remember Unifade Walker, that son of a bitch lesbo who was out there constantly harassing YouTubers, and I recently checked her X profile, and all it is her reposting a list of her content and pretending she's a victim of something. You don't get to throw the first stone and then claim you're the victim, honey. The characterization of the criticism, however, runs counter to the actual feedback players have provided since launch. While critics largely gave the game favorable reviews, fans rejected Veilguard's shift in tone, inconsistent character design, and the overt prioritization of ideological messaging over meaningful world building or storytelling. Remember, this game completely abandons so much of the core lessons, completely gets rid of the ability to use blood magic because you wouldn't be a bad guy, would you? It completely gets rid of any kind of internal consistency. You have the ability to have, I don't know, mastectomy scars when there's blood magic that can redesign your entire body. Steam currently lists the game with a mixed user rating, with tags highlighting orientation in politics as recurring themes in the reviews. Reagan went on to denounce early criticism of the game, labeling it as premature and baseless. People were attacking the game before it was released, she said. It's ridiculous. How can you judge a game, a book, a film, or a TV show before it's actually released? You can't. It's an idiotic stance to take. You're right, babe, we should have kept this. You can't judge something before it comes out, so we should have kept the original Sonic design. I think that is a wonderful idea. Or maybe, and hear me out, early criticism is incredibly important when it comes to a product, because how else would they know when they've stepped on somebody's toes? If we don't tell them what they did wrong in the trailer, how could they possibly fix it? Remember, the backlash to the Sonic trailer made it so they delayed the movie by, 6 months so they could redesign every single Sonic in it, and by God, did it save that movie. Don't get me wrong, I love the Sonic movie, but if they didn't do the redesign, or if it had originally come out with the initial design, I don't think the movie would have been nearly half the success that it ended up being. Early fan criticism saved the Sonic movie and led to a phenomenal trilogy of Sonic films. That only happened because fans were vocal. We weren't toxic, we weren't anti-fans, and by God, we would have hoped it failed if they kept this design because this looks freaking terrible. The problem isn't our criticism, the problem is that you don't like it because it victimizes you because you're the one making the stupid mistakes. But many fans argue that they were reacting to marketing material and developer interviews that telegraphed the game's priorities from the outset, including the now infamous announcement of a genderless party member and a player option to choose a new gender identity mid-game, not to mention the ability to add surgical scars on the chest of the character creator. And let's not forget, they want you to react to marketing material. When they put out a teaser, when they put out a trailer, it is to gauge fan interaction. It is to gauge interest. When they put out a teaser, it is to see if the audience likes it. I have done a whole lot of gaming research before. I generally work with a group called Good Gamer Group who does amazing gaming surveys, and I've been paid a lot because I do them. And it's a phenomenal thing to do. It's a great experience to do. But it's all because when they put out this marketing material, which they have us react to, when I do a gaming study, I generally have to look at a trailer and see what it looks like, or have to react to early concept art and give my opinion, because they're looking for audience opinions so they know what works and what doesn't, and so they can fix where it's broken. The point of marketing material is to gauge a reaction so they can fix it. And these announcements weren't made quietly, but were front and center in pre-release press cycles, inviting scrutiny from longtime BioWare followers who felt the game was prioritizing modern identity themes at the expense of narrative depth. Remember, they plastered Unifade Walker everywhere. They put Eddie's face in every single place that they could possibly imagine to do so. They were proud of their progressive ideas, and they were proud to display these kinds of things that people generally don't like. They wore it on their sleeve as though it was a bottom surgery arm scar. The Dragon Age the Veilguard backlash reached its peak in January when EA admitted the game had underperformed by 50%, falling drastically short of expectations. Days later, game director Corinne Bush departed the company and BioWare began laying off key staff. No future updates or expansions for Veilguard are planned. And let's not forget, there was one planned that they had to cancel because of how severely bad the reception to this game was. And despite this fallout, Reagan closed the interview by expressing continued support for the studio. I only ever want to see the folks from BioWare thrive, because I adore them, she said, and whatever they go on to do next, I have no doubt their talents will be richly rewarded. We're really lucky we'll get more gold from them in the future. Here's the thing, Reagan. So do we. We too love BioWare. We too love the studio. We too pray that they have a success, but not with the current team. We love what they did in the past. We love what they used to stand for. And by God, by the time you replace everyone, we're no longer going to care because it's no longer the same company. We're looking at a ship of Theseus and they've completely replaced everything, including the head captain. It's nothing more than a shell, than a husk, and we would love nothing more than for it to thrive, and nothing more than to support it, but we cannot support something that actively hates us and the stories we once held beloved. We cannot in good conscience support somebody who wants to destroy something that we all heavily appreciate. Now, there was one line that came from the IGN initial article that was completely summarized in the That Park Place article. At launch, The Veilguard was review bombed online. Criticism of the game being woke centered on its inclusion of a non-binary companion character and the ability for the player to choose to be transgender. On Steam, Dragon Age The Veilguard now sits with mixed player response and the user-defined tags for the game describing it under LGBTQ+, and politics labels. And the whole point of this line that I'm bringing up is to show that at no point does IGN even pretend to have any kind of integrity. At no point does IGN pretend to want to show this with honesty. Right from the get-go, they can't help but describe our opinions without marring them. This is a non-stop ad hominem attack, and it's all that they can ever rely on. And then shortly after that, a prolific writer over at BioWare had to come out and say his own piece, once again marring fans. Blaming everything on this notion of the anti-fan, a person who is more invested in something failing and always flopping than actually invested in its success. The proper term for this is called a hater. So this was an interview done with an individual named David Gator, former lead writer in Dragon Age Origins, Dragon Age 2, and Dragon Age Inquisition, is drawing new attention for comments made in recent GamesRadar interview about so-called anti-fans. In the piece, Gator criticized what he calls anti-fans, individuals who, he claims, actively work to see certain games fail as a form of punishment for creative decisions they disagree with. Hey Gator, by the way, that's a terrible last name. How does that differ from a real fan? A real fan should want a studio to fail when they betray you with their studio decisions. The comments come amid growing online discourse around titles like Veilguard and Concord, both of which face extensive fan criticism over gameplay direction and perceived ideological messaging. Gator, who has not worked at BioWare since January 2016 and did not contribute to the Veilguard, which was developed long after his departure. The game was released in October 2024 and met with divisive reception from longtime fans, as you all know. Now, Gator was really important at BioWare during what many fans consider the studio's golden age. He was the lead writer in Baldur's Gate 2 Shadows of Am, co-wrote Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, and later helped craft the Dragon Age franchise, but he left BioWare nearly a decade ago, shortly after the launch of Inquisition, citing burnout and creative decision. Furthermore, he also said that he would have just left the studio anyway because he didn't like how it was becoming so entwined with different aspects of identity and whatnot. But in the interview, Gator went on to argue that fandoms have changed, becoming more entwined with personal identity and more hostile towards creative deviations. Yes, when you make a franchise that people grow to love and care about, they're going to become invested, and that's a good thing. And when you change that, they're going to get emotional because they care. That is called caring. But here's the thing, you're allowed to make changes so long as they're respectful and faithful to the source. If you keep that intention in place, then nobody will care. Lots of people like the changes made to God of War with the modern set of games for the PS5. I personally don't care because I've never been a PlayStation person. People liked the changes made to the Dishonored universe in Dishonored 2 and many other changes. They liked the changes made in the prequels to how the Jedi Order works. You can make changes so long as you hold the fans' desires at heart. He added that this evolution is making it harder for game developers to engage with the broader player base, as hostility often drowns out genuine criticism. This, in his view, has led to developers withdrawing from public forums to avoid culture war flare-ups. Gator, and the rest of your stupid industry, maybe the culture war is the real criticism. Just because you don't like the criticism doesn't make it invalid. When we complain about something cultural related, maybe it's because you missed the mark on the zeitgeist entirely. You've completely failed to get where the culture is. You completely failed to understand what any of us want or desire, and you're pushing an agenda that none of us endorse. Maybe you should think about that instead of shoving your head in the sand and go, la 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 la, I don't care because I disagree with you. You wanted genuine criticism, and then when you get genuine criticism, you throw it out the window because you assume it's all cultural based, and how exactly is that not genuine? Gator's framing echoes arguments previously made by other developers attached to controversial or underperforming projects, where criticism from fans is redefined as targeted antagonism. But that argument falls apart when stacked against the performance of games like Dragon Age the Veilguard. This wasn't a case of a small group of so-called anti-fans tanking a game out of spite, it was the broader gaming audience that turned away. From underwhelming preview reactions to low pre-order numbers and poor community sentiment, the signs of rejection were widespread and organic. So, okay, let me just ask you guys, just the developers, nobody else, the real people who have brains can go away. If it's all just a small segment of anti-fans, why does the general audience not compensate? If it's nothing more than just a handful of bad people on the internet who just want to see it fail, why does the general audience and the general zeitgeist not ignore us? Why do they listen? Why do they follow? Why is it when we predict a game is going to fail, it always does? When we predict a movie is going to fail, it generally does. Please explain to me where this dichotomy is coming from. If we're all just a small group of chuds on the internet, why does pop culture and general culture trends agree with us? If it was all because of a couple of anti-fans, then how come the game didn't sell and missed the mark by 50%? The game didn't fail because of targeted sabotage, it failed because the market responded honestly. When a title doesn't resonate with longtime fans or general players, it's not a conspiracy, it's a product problem. Blaming criticism rather than confronting creative missteps only widens the disconnect between developers and their audiences. And when you tell developers to ignore us because we're nothing more than culture war reactionaries, that's a huge issue. People refusing to listen to us. The last time we had a good conversation with a creative was back during the Robin Hood issue when Director X was around. He was the last one to actually bother listening to us. And the other thing is, we know from the Dragon Age the Veilguard stuff, based on articles put out by Smash JT, that the staff at BioWare have issues with it too. They have problems with it, but the culture at BioWare is so toxic that nobody can mention their problems with what's being written without being fired, because it is a culture of extreme toxic positivity and of extreme leftism. And Gator's anti-fan remarks land in the middle of a continued backlash over Dragon Age the Veilguard, a game widely seen as a departure from BioWare's traditional RPG design. Critics have pointed to simplified mechanics, lack of player agency, and story themes that many believe reflect broader industry trends prioritizing messages over gameplay. Though Gator had no role in Veilguard, his commentary being interpreted by some fans as a defense of a studio that many feel have lost its way. I know you guys have heard it a million times and you hear it a million more. When it comes to reaction, the worst thing in the world you can get is apathy. Hatred isn't the opposite of liking, it is a brother to it. When you hate something, it is because a part of you cares about it. And what they've done is they took hatred and they turned it to apathy. We don't care. We know it's going to be bad. We know you're going to disrespect us. We know you're going to hate us. So why would we even bother giving you the time of day? That's the real issue. They're demanding that apathy sets in and they're doing nothing to prevent it. Because at the end of the day, they also don't care. This is a job to them and only a stepping stone so they can push their ideology. None of these people really care about the game one way or another. And there's some lines that he missed from the initial article, the initial interview, that really show how out of touch these developers are. One of the complaints Gator raised is that the RPG audience doesn't really agree with itself as to what an RPG requires. And they're very determined suddenly to see your game fail as sort of lesson to others who would make games of the same type, right? And then honestly, these days, there's some element of that present in almost all fandoms, but it's always sort of been there for RPGs in particular. Gator, we don't give a shit what an RPG is. We don't care. You just put out a game that you think will appeal to the audience you want to appeal to at a budget that will affirm the audience you're targeting. Dragon Age the Veilguard failed because it wasn't Dragon Age, but it had the Dragon Age name. If you made the exact same game, just took out the Dragon Age stuff and replaced it with generic fantasy stuff, and you made the game for a quarter of the budget, maybe you wouldn't have this problem. Market the game to the correct audience, but you refuse to listen to the audience, so you think all of us, or the majority of us, are this modern audience. Game, you're right. You're 100% correct. The RPG audience doesn't really agree with itself what an RPG requires. So take a risk. And when we tell you what we don't like, maybe listen and stop pretending it's nothing but hatred. We're telling you what we don't like, so by God, listen. You don't get anywhere by trying to be cookie cutter, and that's exactly what Gator's complaining about. He's complaining that he can't just be a copy-paste. Do something original, take a risk for a change, and maybe you'll get rewarded. He also takes a moment to blame it on the outrage machine, kept in motion by people who've made a career out of stoking or outright fabricating blowback over games in order to drive views and followers. With this personal investment in seeing a game succeed or fail, or getting hung up on sales and player numbers as if they demonstrate your good taste, isn't an isolated trend. So you just think I'm doing this out of a drive for a content machine? Maybe it's because I actually care. I've got video games playing behind me. I got video games on my computer that I'm going to play as soon as I'm done editing. And you know, this is a great one actually, Mortal Kombat and DC. And I gave a lot of criticism for Mortal Kombat 1 and it's all been ways around as hatred instead of being considered for the actual criticism that it is. And that's pretty indicative of what's going on in general. Maybe you should start listening to us, because most of the content machine, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, the problem is apathy. And when we come out to say something, and when the audience listens to us, maybe it's because people agree with the sentiment. Now, I would like you to point out exactly where it is we made up blowback. If we're talking about it, it's because it exists, and very few of us have any actual effect to push the zeitgeist. And if we have the strength to push the zeitgeist, maybe you should ask why, because maybe we're still accurate. Stop pretending we're a outrage machine. Stop pretending we're anti-fans or whatever, and maybe you should acknowledge the fact that people listen to us, well, not me, but people listen to Hypnotic, Yellow Flash, Evan T, those people, because they're on the dot. They know what they're talking about, and they know what the general audience feels. We're not here just to get clicks. We get clicks because people agree with us. That's how this works. We're a voice for the voiceless, not the creator of their ideas. They already believe it. We just allow for them to know they're not alone. But you can keep waving us away, saying we're nothing more than a hate machine, saying we're nothing more than anti-fans, saying we're nothing more than people who want it to fail from the get-go. You can keep saying all of these things, but the real world doesn't agree with you. Your sales numbers don't agree with you. You can keep your head buried in the sand, or maybe you can pull it out of your ass and realize maybe we're right about at least one small thing. And maybe it's time you change that thing to appeal to the actual audience who's invested in these stories, who's invested in the future of these games. Because here's the thing. If you keep giving us slop, eventually we're just going to give up on you and we'll go find something else to play, because we're more than happy to do just that. But that's pretty much what I've got. Let me know in the comments what you guys think about this, and I will see you guys on the next one.